Thanks again for joining us. Our top story, the top U.S. diplomat is in Saudi Arabia trying to shore up support for President Trump's Middle East policy. Mike Pompeo is expected to meet soon with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The U.S. will likely want to focus on Iran and Syria, but Pompeo has been dogged by questions about the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. He says he'll discuss it with Saudi officials.
I'll say what we've said consistently. America's position, both privately and publicly, is the same. This was an outrageous act, an unacceptable murder. Those who were responsible will be held accountable by the United States of America. We're determined to do that. We're determined to get at the facts just as quickly and as comprehensively as we can. We've had a policy that's been remarkably consistent with respect to this. We, like the rest of the world, value human rights all across the globe.
But the U.S. has not been consistent on the Khashoggi case. Many lawmakers and intelligence officials believe the Saudi Crown Prince ordered this killing. And the White House and President Trump in particular have been hesitant to embrace that conclusion. And staying in the region, Mr. Pompeo has been across the Middle East to reassure allies that the U.S. withdrawal from Syria will be orderly and will not be premature.
Meantime, President Trump tweeted that equipment is being rotated out of the country now, but the 2,000 U.S. military personnel remain. He also had a message for Turkey. Don't attack the Kurds. Mr. Trump says the U.S. will devastate Turkey economically if it doesn't comply.
Turkey considers some Kurdish groups to be terrorists. The president adds the U.S. doesn't want the Kurds to provoke Turkey either. Turkey's presidential spokesman responded, telling Mr. Trump it was a fatal mistake to equate Syrian Kurds with Kurdish militants.
Let's dig deeper into this story. CNN's Ben Wiedemann is live in Cairo, Egypt for us. Ben, good to see you. The U.S. president just now warning Turkey to not make a move on the Kurds as the U.S. prepares to pull out of Syria. You've reported from the front lines with the Kurds, Ben. How important is the president's support for them now?
The American support for the Kurds is absolutely critical. And now with the U.S. Beginning a withdrawal from Syria, they are clearly feeling that they are being left high and dry by the United States, because without U.S. Air support, without to a certain extent a U.S. ground presence in northeastern Syria, they fear they will be at the receiving end of a Turkish attack. But this just underscores just how complicated a situation the United States has gotten into, where on the one hand it supports Kurdish fighters, and on the other, these Kurdish fighters are seen by Turkey, a NATO ally of the United States, as terrorists. And when President Trump threatens, essentially, to economically destroy Turkey, this really just sort of rips up the entire diplomatic playbook that the United States has been working on for decades to make this sort of threat. Really, I mean, look, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Turkish president, has a very sensitive, he gets very angry, let me just put it that way. And when an American president comes out and threatens to economically destroy Turkey, this is not going to be well received. The Turkish response was from Ibrahim Kalin, his advisor. Wait until President Erdogan wakes up and really goes after the American president for this tweet. It's also important to point out that the Turks can now, President Erdogan can say, look, the United States uses our economy and the American tools at their disposal against us. And this is why the Turkish economy, which is currently in very bad shape, is ailing. He can point to the United States and say they are doing this to us. And keep in mind, it's also election season in Turkey as well. So the President Trump has thrown a lot of ammunition that President Erdogan is now going to use. So buckle up, guys.
All right, Ben. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, is also in the region to reassure our allies with the U.S. pulling out of Syria, but he'll also be talking about another major international story. He will talk with the Crown Prince about the killing of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi by the Saudis. What tone do you expect his comments to take, since the administration has said they don't believe the Crown Prince ordered the killing?
It's going to be a real sensitive topic, because the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States has made it clear it believes that Mohammed bin Salman, the man with whom Secretary Pompeo is scheduled to meet, was ultimately responsible for the murder and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul on the 2nd of October. It's a little hard to get around that, but what we have seen consistently from the Trump administration is, yes, they pay lip service to the importance of holding those who killed Jamal Khashoggi responsible, but at the same time, they also stress the economic importance of Saudi Arabia to the United States and the value of its arms purchases from the United States. So I think at the end of the day, Secretary Pompeo is obviously going to publicly say strong words, perhaps, but he's not going to point in the direction of Mohammed bin Salman. And I think despite the wishes of those who would like to see justice served, it probably won't. Natalie?
Yes, we were watching footage of a meeting he had in October, just before the killing of Khashoggi, with Mohammed bin Salman. All smiles. We'll wait and see what happens now. Ben Wiedemann, as always, Ben, thanks for your reporting.
A new Wall Street Journal report claims the U.S. National Security Council asked the Pentagon for military options to strike Iran last year. The newspaper says the request followed a September attack by Iranian-linked militants near the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad.
In a statement to CNN, a spokesman for the council says this: "We continue to review the status of our personnel following attempted attacks on our embassy in Baghdad and our Basra consulate, and we will consider a full range of options to preserve their safety and our interests." It's not yet known if President Trump knew of the request or whether serious plans for a U.S. strike took shape. Meantime, a weekend of explosive allegations in two major newspapers has Washington buzzing and has, well, we could say, the president kind of angry.
Yeah, Donald Trump slammed the New York Times, calling their Friday story that the FBI was concerned he was working on behalf of Russia insulting.
He also denied a later Washington Post report that he concealed the details of his meetings with the Russian President, Vladimir Putin. One Republican says Mr. Trump's actions show Mr. Trump is being tough on Russia.
In the end, I'm going to judge this president based on his actions. As you said earlier, we have increased sanctions. We have begun providing lethal defensive weaponry as well as training to Ukrainians so they can defend their territorial integrity. The jury will be out on other actions this president will or will not take. So in the end, you just have to, basically judge him on his actions. We defeated basically ISIS. We've taken away that caliphate. We were all concerned about a precipitous pullout. Now that's going to be conditions-based. We can certainly attack ISIS and continue to attack them from positions in Iraq. So again, I will wait to see, but I've seen pretty strong actions on the part of this administration against Russia.
And Boris Sanchez now takes a closer look at the White House response.
The White House is dismissing reports in both the New York Times and the Washington Post this week, with Press Secretary Sarah Sanders putting out two statements that were eerily similar. In both of them, the press secretary dismisses the details of the reports, in one of them suggesting that the report is absurd, in the other making the case that the liberal media is out to get President Trump. In both of these statements, she actually compares President Trump to former President Obama, saying that Trump has been tougher on Russia than Obama has. We know, at least publicly, that's not the case. Let's not forget that President Obama publicly confronted Vladimir Putin over the issue of Russian election meddling, pressing the Russian leader in 2016. President Trump simply has not done that. The president, during that press conference in Helsinki, failed to really press the Russian leader. Further, President Trump was asked about these two reports on Fox News over the weekend. He called them insulting. Listen to this.
I think it's the most insulting thing I've ever been asked. I think it's the most insulting article I've ever had written. And if you read the article, you'd see that they found absolutely nothing.
Though new CNN polling shows that a majority of Americans blame President Trump for the partial government shutdown, the president went on Twitter this weekend and attacked Democrats over the shutdown yet again, suggesting that they should return to Washington to try to hammer out a deal as he waits for them in the White House. Meantime, we're hearing that there is tension during these back and forth negotiations to reopen the federal government, not just between Democrats and Republicans, but also between President Trump and his acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney. A White House source confirming an Axios report that the president not only cut off his chief of staff, but also cussed at him while Mulvaney was trying to negotiate with Democrats over the $1.3 billion that they offered to the White House for border security funding. We're told the president said, quote, "Stop, stop, just stop. What are you doing? You're effing it all up, Mick." According to the source, there was no reaction from anyone else in the room. And apparently we're hearing that Democrats are giving the acting chief of staff an earful as well, suggesting that he enjoys the government shutdown and wants it to keep moving forward. Boris Sanchez, CNN at the White House.
The Democratic Senator Mark Warner is the senior Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee.
And he spoke with our Jake Tapper about what he learned while investigating possible collusion with Russia. According to Warner, the clues are there.
That's the defining question of our investigation and the Mueller investigation. Was there collusion? I'm not going to talk about what we may have been briefed in the Gang of Eight when these investigations opened. But I do think it's curious that throughout that whole summer, when these investigations started, you had Vladimir Putin policies almost being parroted by Donald Trump. You had Trump say only nice things about Putin. He never spoke ill about Russia. The Republican campaign doctrines softened on Russia and decreased their willingness to defend Ukraine. There was a series of outside actions. I think we all remember when Trump in his bluster basically said to the Russians, if you've got more emails, bring them on. These are not actions of a traditional president for the United States.
All right, but
let
me just push back for 1 second because President Trump. Okay, go ahead. Finish.
Well, I just think we need to put all three pieces of what happened in context of last week. We have the story of the level of concern that the FBI had, again, if the story is correct, to, in a sense, open their own investigation whether Donald Trump was compromised. We have on top of that the fact of the most recent story that Trump had a series of meetings with Putin, which he broke all protocol, where normally these meetings you bring in top aides so that there is some record so you can have the appropriate follow-up. In these meetings, he brought in Tillerson once, but the other meetings were simply with the interpreter, and the interpreter was then restricted on, in a sense, sharing that information, to the point that we still don't know, the American government does not know what was discussed between Trump and Vladimir Putin in that, frankly, pathetic, embarrassing encounter where Trump was kowtowing on the world stage to Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. It was one of the worst days post-World War II in terms of America's lack of leadership against a dictator like Putin.
Do you think President Trump is wittingly or unwittingly an agent of the Russians?
Jake, I think the earlier evidence this week where the president's campaign manager, and we're unaware of whether the president knew, where the president's campaign manager, at whose direction, turned over confidential polling data to a known Russian agent who has ties to Putin and Deripaska. Why would you turn over that information? And what's curious, Jake, is that it would be that kind of information that would inform the Russians later in the campaign when they launched their social media efforts, where they created these fake identities. And as we've seen with, clear-cut proof, a lot of those efforts were aimed at suppressing African-American vote. Did they use that polling data to guide the Russian social media efforts to suppress African-American vote? We don't know the answer to that yet. I would hope that Mueller has got more indication, but it is a very real question.
All right, Mark Warner talking to CNN's Jake Tapper earlier.
Hi everyone, my name's Mike. I'm the creator of Mox News. And for the last 15 years, I have been telling you that as long as I have the support of the community that I serve, Mox News will post videos forever. And that's the truth. As long as I have your support, no one could ever make me stop. Unfortunately, currently, less than 1/2 of 1/10 of 1% of Mox News viewers ever donate, tip, or contribute anything back. Again, let me make that really clear. Much less than 1/2 of 1/10 of 1% ever give anything back. And to those of you who have donated to Mox News, I want to thank you so much, because it's because of your generosity that we have been able to bring attention to important videos that millions and millions of eyes would have never seen. And I think that that's an amazing thing that we've been able to make happen together. And I can't thank you enough for helping me make that happen. So it's not too late. If you'd like to see Mox News covering the 2020 presidential election, if you can't imagine the 2020 presidential election without Mox News, please, there's still time. You can make a difference. It's easy to make a contribution, donation, or tip. You can go to moxnews.com, or in the text body of this video, there are clickable links to the Patreon page or to the PayPal page. And again, it should take less than 2 minutes to make a donation, and your donation can make a big difference. So I thank you all. Stay cool. One of these days this war is going to end, and it would be awesome if Mox News could be there to celebrate that day with you.